Hi, I'm Chris. I work in the service department at Bike Friday. Today we're going to take a quick look at visually confirming that your rear derailleur is aligned correctly with the bike and not going to tangle with the spokes, and talk briefly about limit screws and how they differ from barrel adjusters. Generally, when you take the bike out of the case, put it together, you want to make sure that your quick releases are all snug and everything's anchored and you don't have any loose spots on the bike. But one of the things you want to keep an eye out for, especially if you've been traveling with the suitcase and TSA and other people maybe getting into your bike and moving things around, is to make sure that the rear derailleur is not been bent on the frame. The reason for this concern is if there's some sort of impact or some such that pushes this in and pushes this little red section of the frame here inward, the tension wheel down here on your derailleur arm might be pushed over a little bit and might catch up in the spokes. You don't want that to happen. If that grabs in there, it can pull everything back, do pretty significant damage to both the components and to the frame. So this is how you take a look at that and make sure that your bike's going to be behaving well when you go on the ride. Start out shifting into your lowest gear. That's going to be your physically largest cassette cog, the chain as close as possible to the bike. Looking at the bike from behind, you want to look at this tension arm on the derailleur and make sure that it's straight up and down, parallel to the wheel. If it's significantly deflected inward, that's a sign that maybe it received some sort of impact and you want to take a closer look at it. To confirm that you aren't going to have problems, pedal the bike slowly and push. I'm holding onto the bike with the left hand and I'm pushing against this arm with my fingers, trying to push this into the spokes. If the chain starts to climb off of your biggest cassette cog into the spokes, that tells you that you've run into a problem. It's a good idea to take it by a bike shop, have them take a look at it, or if you feel comfortable dressing your frame that way. One of the miracles of steel as a frame construction unit is it's got a remarkably resilient ability to be bent. I don't recommend bending it back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. But if you do run into a little bit of a skewing there, you can usually straighten the frame out and ensure that you won't have problems with the chain climbing into the spokes. The other thing I wanted to caution everybody about are these two limit screws that you have on the rear derailleur. These little small screws here. This is a Shimano Altus derailleur. Different derailleurs will have different limit screws in different locations. Usually, I don't know how close that camera will designate this, there will be a little H and a little L indicating your high and low. Sometimes folks say, oh, my bike is not quite getting into the gear correctly. I should turn one of those screws to try to get it into the correct gear. These do not adjust where the chain sits in the middle of the range. They are simply bookends, stops on the outside to keep the chain from pulling all the way off in between your highest gear and the frame, or pulling off in the low between your lowest gear and the spokes. These are set when the bikes are put together. It doesn't hurt to take a look at them every now and then. But if you're running into shifting problems where it's not quite climbing into the gear correctly, these are not the items that you want to be turning. All they are is stops at the end of the range. The adjustment of where the chain is actually sitting is achieved through adjustment of the barrel adjuster, which will be a topic for a time to come up soon. One of our future topics. It's a little bit more involved, a little bit more theoretical. Most any bike shop should be able to handle this. There's also a zillion resources about it on the internet. Hopefully one of these days we can put a video together for you and give you a cursory review of how barrel adjusters work. Thank you very much. Have a good day. Safe travels.